Welcome to the 21st Century Man podcast. Today we're jumping into a deep dive on Chapter 9 from the book, The 21st Century Man.
That's right. This one's called Avoiding Stupid Accidents.
Yeah, and it's written by Dr. Malcolm Johnson, who's an emergency medicine doc, and Michael Abashian, a public health researcher. They tackle something that, well, seems simple but really isn't.
Exactly. It's all about those risks kind of hiding in plain sight in our everyday lives, things we often just don't think about.
And not just bad luck, right? It's more about understanding the why behind accidents.
Precisely. The goal isn't to make you paranoid, but more aware so you can make smarter choices day to day.
They kick it off with a quote from Muhammad Ali that really hits home. You just don't let yourself believe it will happen to you.
That sums up a big part of the problem, doesn't it? That feeling of invincibility, or at least, that other people have accidents.
Yeah, it won't happen to me. This chapter really unpacks how that thinking can, well, backfire.
That underestimation is a huge theme. And they illustrate it immediately with this story about a guy named Tom.
Oh yeah, Tom's story. Sobering. You picture a regular Saturday, maybe Tom's had a couple of beers, decides to clean the second-story windows.
Seems innocent enough on the surface.
Right, but then the small mistakes start piling up. Ladder's a bit short.
So instead of getting a different ladder, he tries to, rig something up.
Exactly. Tapes a brush to a broomstick, climbs up there, bucket of water, balanced precariously. You can see where this is going.
It's that chain reaction, isn't it? One slightly poor decision leads to another. He bumps the bucket, reacts instinctively.
Loses his balance, falls. And it's not just a minor fall. We're talking broken legs, a hematoma.
Yeah, serious injuries. And then the recovery leads to this whole other nightmare with opioid addiction.
It's just a brutal example of how seemingly small risks, ignored, can cascade into something life-altering.
Absolutely. It drives home the point that accidents often aren't random. They're frequently tied to our choices and, frankly, not seeing the danger right in front of us.
And the chapter asks a really important question. Why do men seem to have more of these accidents, statistically speaking?
Which leads us nicely into the next point. They discuss the Darwin Awards.
Ah, yes, the Darwin Awards. For anyone who doesn't know, these are sort of, well, a morbidly funny look at people removing themselves from the gene pool in exceptionally foolish ways.
Right. And the statistic they pull out is pretty stark. Between 1995 and 2014, something like 89% of the recipients were men.
89%. That's,
Yeah.
wow.
It is. So while it's presented with dark humor, it points to a real trend, maybe a kind of risk-taking behavior that seems more common in men.
And it's not just based on those awards, is it? The chapter brings in actual research data, too.
No, definitely not. They cite studies showing men are, in fact, more likely to end up in the ER with accidental injuries.
And more likely to do risky things in general, like dangerous sports or driving habits.
Yeah, exactly. More engagement in high-risk activities and, unfortunately, higher rates of fatal traffic accidents often linked to risky driving. It paints a consistent picture.
It really does. And this isn't just about personal pain and suffering, right? There's a huge cost to society.
Oh, absolutely. The economic impact is massive. They quote, figures for the U.S. over $660 billion a year.
Billion. With a B.
With a B. That's medical costs and lost work productivity combined. It's staggering.
And a big chunk of that is from unintentional injuries, the kind we're talking about.
Right. Nearly $130 billion in costs just from fatal unintentional injuries.
So things like falls, car crashes.
Those are the big ones, yeah. Falls account for about 37% of ER spending on injuries, and transportation stuff is another 21%.
And going back to the gender difference.
Men make up the lion's share of those costs, too. About 78% of the fatal injury costs, which is around $167 billion, and 63% of the non-fatal costs, about $288 billion.
Those numbers really put it in perspective. It's not just individual tragedies, it's a massive societal burden.
Definitely. It affects healthcare costs, insurance premiums, everything.
Okay, so the chapter then shifts gears a bit, looking at something really relevant for our audience, how our bodies change, especially after 40, and how that bumps up the injury risk.
This is super important. Things we used to do easily might suddenly become, well, more challenging. Our bodies just aren't the same.
Let's break that down. First up, bones.
Right. Bone density tends to decrease. Osteopenia, which is thinning, and osteoporosis, which is more significant loss.
And this isn't just an old lady problem, right? Men get it too.
Absolutely. Lower testosterone plays a role, but also not getting enough calcium or vitamin D. Even some medications and smoking can weaken bones.
So a trip on the stairs could be more serious than it used to be.
Potentially, yes. But the good news is you can fight back.
Yeah.
Weight-bearing exercise is key. along with a good diet.
Okay, what about muscles?
The term is sarcopenia. That's age-related muscle loss. Less muscle mass means less strength, more frailty, and a higher risk of falls and injuries.
Makes sense. So staying active is crucial here too.
Vitally important. Strength training to keep the muscle you have, and
Right.
cardio for overall fitness. To even point back to chapter 89 on testosterone optimization, which ties in.
Got it. Then there's cartilage and tendons.
Yeah, similar story. They lose some of their elasticity and strength over time, but again, consistent exercise helps maintain them.
And our senses, vision and hearing.
Big factors in accidents. If you can't see that uneven pavement or hear that car coming.
Right.
The chapter gives practical tips, especially for computer work, taking breaks, screen position, lighting. And it stresses using glasses or hearing aids if you need them. Again, pointing to other chapters, 23 and 24, for spine and vision care specifics.
Good cross-references. And it's not just physical, is it? Mental focus too.
Correct. Even subtle cognitive decline can make you more prone to accidents. So, staying mentally sharp through engaging activities, social interaction, that helps too.
And circling back to men and risk.
Yeah, the chapter emphasizes that men often engage in riskier sports, jobs, and sometimes just overlook everyday hazards. That idea of pairing mindfulness with activity is great, being present, paying attention.
Okay, so bodies change, men tend towards risk. Now let's get specific. What are the common stupid things, as the chapter calls them, that land men in the ER?
Well, they use CDC data, the WISQARS system. In 2018, over 5.8 million non-fatal injuries for men and over 80,000 deaths from trauma.
Wow. And for guys age 40 to 79, what's the #1 cause of non-fatal injury?
Falls, by far, followed by things like car accidents, poisoning, which we'll get to, cuts, and overexertion.
So falls are a huge one, even in that middle age range.
Definitely. And looking specifically at men over 40, using 2019 data, unintentional injuries were the third leading cause of death overall.
Okay, and the most common fatal injuries for that group?
Motor vehicle accidents are #1, then medication poisoning, then falls again. Firearms accidents are also mentioned.
Let's talk driving first. Over 80,000 deaths for men over 40 in just 2 years, 2017, 2018.
Yeah, and the book is blunt here. There's no trick to driving drunk or impaired. It's about responsibility.
Simple stuff saves lives, though. Seatbelts reduce deaths by like 50%, right?
Around that, yes. Huge impact. And just having a plan if you're drinking, designate a driver, call a cab, use an app. Don't get behind the wheel.
Okay, #2, medication poisoning. This one surprised me. More deaths than firearms.
Almost double between 2017 2018 for men over 40. Around 75,000 deaths. That includes opioid overdoses, yes, but also people misusing prescribed medications.
And just errors, too, like getting the wrong instruction.
Big time. Medication errors affect millions, cost billions. They mentioned about 30% of hospital patients have errors in their medication instructions when they leave. You have to pay attention, ask questions.
Crucial advice. Then falls again, but this time fatal ones. We think of this for the very elderly.
And it is the top cause of injury death for those over 65. But the ladder statistic is eye-opening. Over 500,000 ladder falls a year, and 97% happen at home.
97%. Not construction sites, but just fixing the gutter.
Exactly. Cleaning windows like Tom. It's those everyday tasks where we let our guard down.
And firearms accidents were mentioned briefly as well.
Yes, another category of fatal unintentional injury.
Okay, let's shift to the workplace. The chapter brings up this idea of hypermasculinity. Can you explain that?
Yeah, it's interesting. It refers to exaggerated masculine traits. Think extreme toughness, risk-taking, never showing weakness or pain.
And how does that connect to injuries on the job?
Well, in high risk, often male-dominated fields like construction, mining, farming, there can be this culture where being brave means taking unnecessary risks, or ignoring safety rules, or working through pain when you shouldn't.
So the pressure to act tough leads to carelessness.
That's the idea. Plus, these jobs often have inherent dangers, machinery, chemicals, heights, even violence sometimes. The mindset can compound the existing risk.
That makes sense. It's not just the job itself, but the culture around it.
That reluctance to ask for help, even with simple things, can be part of it too.
Okay, now let's dive into specific injury types the chapter covers. Low back problems seem huge.
Oh yeah, a $50 billion problem, they say.
Yeah.
Very common for men in their 40s. We're talking slip discs, degeneration, stenosis, sciatica.
What causes that? Just getting older?
Age plays a part, but also being out of shape, poor posture, carrying extra weight around the middle, and definitely lifting things the wrong way.
They mentioned Tiger Woods as an example, right? Even elite athletes aren't immune.
Exactly. Shows how debilitating back issues can be.
What about hearing?
Also common. falls, head injuries, sports can cause it, but a huge factor is noise exposure. Loud music, but especially noise at work.
How much noise is too much?
The CDC estimates 22 million workers face damaging noise levels. A simple test. If you have to shout to be heard by someone 3 feet away, it's probably too loud. Or if your ears ring afterwards.
And people wait a long time to get help.
Shockingly long. Average of 7 years, according to the Hearing Loss Association of America. And untreated hearing loss can really impact earnings.
Wow, and most people who need hearing aids don't use them.
Only about 1 in 5. It's a big gap. Chapter 25 has more on protecting your hearing.
Good to know. Eye injuries next millions happen every year.
Over 2 million in the U.S., often from household stuff, chemicals, or at work, cost hundreds of millions in lost productivity and treatment.
Any tips for computer users? Lots of us stare at screens all day.
Yeah, they suggest computer glasses, keeping the screen at the right distance, taking breaks the 20-20-20 rule, looking 20 feet away for 20 seconds every 20 minutes, and adjusting lighting.
And definitely using protective eyewear for home projects,
It's
right?
absolutely critical. Goggles or safety glasses when mowing, trimming, using chemicals, woodworking. Simple prevention.
Okay, moving to orthopedic and dental. Knees seem like a hot spot.
Most frequent orthopedic issue, over 6 million injuries a year. The meniscus and ligaments, especially the ACL and MCL, are vulnerable. Happens in jobs and sports.
They mentioned some big-name NFL players who've had those injuries.
Yeah, Peterson, Watt, Gronk. Shows how common serious knee injuries are, even for pros.
And teeth. Knocked out teeth are common.
Over 5 million a year. Cost $500 million. Sports are a big cause. Rugby, surprisingly, has high rates.
So mouth guards are essential.
Absolutely. For sports, obviously, but maybe even some high-risk jobs. Chapter 53 covers this. Mouth guards can cut dental injuries by up to 50%.
And if a tooth does get knocked out, what do?
Quick action is key. Rinse it gently. Don't scrub. Try to put it back in the socket immediately if you can. If not, store it in milk, not water, and get to a dentist ASAP, ideally within 20-40 minutes.
Good to know. What about things like tennis elbow?
Very common. Over 1 million cases a year. It's tendon inflammation from overuse, repetitive motion, sometimes trauma, usually treated with rest, ice, anti-inflammatories.
Stitch fractures.
Those hairline cracks from impact or overuse, common in runners, basketball players, can be linked to aging, osteoporosis, poor nutrition too. Yao Ming's career ended due to foot stress fractures.
Rotator cuff. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, shoulder injuries, hundreds of thousands a year, can be from trauma, common in men over 40, and especially in sports like climbing. Lots of athletes. Gobi, Drew Brees had these.
Calf and ankle injuries, especially for runners over 40.
Yes, the Mayo Clinic notes these are common and can take a long time to heal, like 12 weeks or more. Achilles tendon ruptures, the weekend warrior injury, happened from sudden overexertion. Even pros like Durant and Beckham have had them.
The chapter even mentions sex-related injuries.
It does, briefly.
Yeah.
Says they're more common than people realize. Maybe 15-22% of Americans experience one, but they're underreported because of embarrassment. Points to Chapter 91 on Peyronie's disease.
And spinal cord injuries.
Thankfully, new cases are relatively low, under 18,000 a year, but many people live with them long term. Main causes are car crashes and falls.
Okay, that covers a lot of specific injuries. What about extreme sports? They seem like an obvious source of accidents for men.
Definitely. They account for over 60% of sports recreation injuries, leading to ER visits for men.
Like ATVs.
Yep. Huge numbers. Back in 2006, almost 150,000 ER visits, over 800 deaths.
Climbing, mountain biking, surfing.
All have their risks. Climbing, rotator cuffs, dislocations, sprains, biking, knee back pain, cuts, fractures, surfing. Drowning is the main fatal risk, but also head trauma, strains.
What about skydiving? Seems terrifyingly risky.
Surprisingly, fatalities are quite low. Only 15 in 2019, mostly experienced jumpers making errors. Injuries are usually on landing, concussions, fractures.
But base jumping is worse.
Considered the most dangerous, yeah. Much higher fatality rate than skydiving, like 1 death per 60 participants, apparently.
And skiing, snowboarding.
Generally less risky than some other sports, but still common causes of knee tears, sprains, fractures.
So across the board, men seem drawn to these activities with inherent risks, which brings us back to avoiding risky behaviors in general.
Right. The chapter circles back to that tendency. Cites studies on simple things, like men being less cautious crossing busy roads, but also bigger patterns like smoking, drinking too much, unsafe sex.
And less likely to seek help or talk about health problems.
That too. Less likely to engage in health-promoting behaviors or address symptoms early.
And this isn't just a young man's game, is it? Risk-taking continues later in life.
It can, yeah. Up to around age 50, they say. Head injuries are common in men 35-50, and drowning and motorcycle accident rates peak for men in their mid-40s.
So it's a lifelong awareness issue, which leads to the final section, practical prevention tips.
Exactly. Pulling it all together, using info from the Men's Health Network. Reminding us accidents are the #1 killer for men under 44, #3 overall, mostly due to riskier choices.
Okay, let's run through the key prevention areas. Motor vehicles.
Basic but vital. Seatbelts, always. Follow speed limits, don't drive drunk or tired, don't ride with someone who is. Helmets on bikes, motorcycles, skateboards. Drive defensively.
Accidental poisoning, second leading cause, men twice as likely to die from it.
Keep the poison control number handy, 1-800-222-1222. Install smoke and CO detectors. Read cleaning product labels, never mix bleach and ammonia. Ventilate when using chemicals. Take meds exactly as prescribed.
Fall's leading cause of injury death over 65, but relevant earlier too.
Stay active to maintain balance and strength. Good lighting at home. Railings on stairs. Non-skid mats in tub showers. Use ladders, safely check condition, proper angle, don't overreach. Get screened for osteoporosis after 60.
Workplace accidents. Men account for over 90% of on-the-job deaths.
Mostly because more men are in high-risk jobs. So use all the safety gear provided: hard hats, harnesses, masks, eye protection. Don't cut corners. Ask for help with heavy lifting or tricky tasks. Be extra careful with chemicals.
And finally, guns.
The chapter's clearest advice is, the easiest way to prevent accidental shootings is not to have guns at home.
But if people do choose to have them,
Then strict safety is paramount. Keep them unloaded, locked securely in a safe or lockbox. Store ammunition separately, also locked up. And be extremely careful during cleaning. Treat it as if it's loaded.
wow, that's a lot of ground covered in one chapter.
It really is. This deep dive into Chapter 9, Avoiding Stupid Accidents, shows just how many injuries really are preventable with a bit more thought and awareness.
Dr. Johnson and Mr. Rabashian did a great job laying out the risks, the reasons why men might be more susceptible, and giving really practical advice.
Absolutely. We definitely recommend you read the whole chapter, and honestly the whole book, The 21st Century Man. It's packed with valuable stuff.
For sure, it's practical, evidence-based guidance that can genuinely help you live a healthier, safer life. A fantastic resource.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, thank you for joining us today on the 21st Century Man podcast for this look at Chapter 9.
Next time, we'll be tackling Chapter 10, Managing Persistent Pain. Hope you can join us then.